morning, all. It's 9 a.m. and we're still admitting a few people, so I'm gonna take just a couple more minutes, okay? Shouldn't be too long. We have a full agenda today, and I know you all might have some questions for our panel coming up today. So I want to make sure that we kind of explain kind of what we'll be doing today and how this will proceed. Since it's new on Zoom, we've tried to do kind of panels before, but not really so much on Zoom. So it'll be a learning experience now. So Ian, you're a co-host also. So Ian Tafoya will also be assisting with the panel today. A few things about business, and just to welcome everybody today and just say what we'll be doing. We have minutes that went out. It looks like we haven't approved our August minutes for the delegate meeting. So I'm going to give everybody a couple minutes. If you find it in your email and you want to review those, take a minute or two, and we'll have a vote on approving those minutes. If you've already reviewed them, great. If not, please try and locate those. The other issue is today, I received a few questions ahead of time for the panel. And instead of us taking the time to introduce the panel, since our meeting's only 2 hours, we're letting them introduce themselves so that the panel will have the opportunity to really explain what they're doing. And our topic is, community policing, rethinking police. So we want them to talk about what they're doing and really explain what they do. So anyway, the other thing is that we have a couple of items to vote on. You will be receiving a Survey Monkey to vote on those in the next couple of days. Please vote on those. I don't know if we have a final time for a date for those certain. Usually we do 3 days so that you can vote. You have the opportunity to vote in 3 days. So please look in your email after the meeting today. The one topic to vote on is, it was discussed, if you haven't reviewed it, you can review the YouTube of the September delegate meeting, and transportation has talked about it. It's the 20 is plenty. So if you want to go back and hear more about that, if you don't know more about that, or Joel Noble might be open to an email to talk about that with you. But that's the 20 is plenty for transportation in the city. The other item we have is Adrian Brown brought up a question, a motion regarding inclusion and racism, regarding how INC proceeds in the wake of all the things that have been happening. So we want to make sure we have a question and discussion about that, and that can be at the end of the meeting today. So, but for today's meeting, we can chat about, Adrian can at least maybe introduce his motion again. I think we admitted you, Adrian. Are you on? Do you want to unmute and just at least read your motion? Adrian, can you unmute?
Yes, am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. There you are. Okay.
Thank you. Give me a moment. I'm in Uray at a very bad connection, so.
Oh, okay.
go on with other stuff, and or can you read the motion? I don't have it in front of me at this instant.
Let me go back and find the motion. It was sent to all, but let me.
Sent to everybody.
That's sorry to put you on the spot.
Loretta, I do have it in front of me. I'd be happy to read it for you.
Thank you.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
This is Lou Raiders, and the motion is Denver Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, defined as Inc., is anti-racist and is against all forms of racism. Accordingly, all actions considered by, taken by, or supported by Inc. shall be clearly shown to have the effect of eliminating racism and racially disparate impacts. And I believe that it was tabled by Joel at the end, and I would appreciate time for discussion today. And I do appreciate the motion. And if anybody needs to have it, I'd be happy to put it up in the chat if that would be helpful.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. If you could please, if you could type it into the chat, that'd be great. I think there was a question of how to effectuate and how to make sure that INC could, follow that. So I think that's a discussion to be had. I don't want to leave it hanging if we start the discussion and then we start the panel. It's a question of whether we would have the opportunity to really have a full discussion about it. But I think what would be great is at least if everyone had the opportunity to read it, think about it, and then we can have a discussion at the end. We can just go over a little bit and say who our panel will be in a few minutes. We're still admitting a few people today. Hopefully you all have your coffee. Reminder, please mute when you're not speaking, just because that helps us so that we don't have any background noise. I know sometimes people have dogs barking in the background or whatever. So we want to make sure that we all have an opportunity just to hear each other. So if we can just make sure that we are muted while we're not speaking. And I'll do that. And sometimes I forget to unmute. All right. Here it is one more time. Denver Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, INC, is anti-racist and is against all forms of racism. Accordingly, all actions considered by, taken by, or supported by INC shall be clearly shown to have the effect of eliminating racism and racially disparate impacts. Adrian, I think maybe you're trying to get to that legal aspect of so that it's not so that it has the actual effect. So I think that was my take on where you were trying to go. But I don't know if you want to speak a minute about it.
Loretta, do we want to have people raise their hands if they want to speak on the issue?
Yeah. Why don't we do that? Can people raise their hands if you have a question?
Let me just introduce it one more time. We did discuss this at the last meeting. The purpose of this.
Oh, we lost you, Adrian. Adrian, we'll come back to you.
So Lou Raiders is next, Miles, and then Susan Payne.
That's what I thought. Okay. Lou, do you want to go? Adrian, we lost you. Can you hold on just a moment until you get a better connection? Let's get Lou to respond.
Thank you very much. I could try to start my video here. So let's see if, here I am. All right. Good morning, everyone. I've looked at this quite a bit and actually reached out without a response from Adrian to discuss it. I I really believe in the intent of this, but being a lawyer and having done quite a bit of work trying to research in this area to drill down on what this means and how we can really effectuate this intent. I had come up with an alternative that I had wanted to speak with Adrian about. I did send it to Chris to send to the executive committee. I think she did that, but my concern about this resolution is that while the intent I think is fair and we should take something up on this point, I don't think this is workable because it speaks to all actions, which if you really are working in this space, you realize what that means is all actions. Where you're going to hold your next event, it would really need to be a place owned by people of color where you had every single action being traced to a way to eliminate racism. It's not workable for an organization like Inc. when so much of what is happening is coming from from other neighborhoods. So I propose the following. I'll try to get up in the chat. I'm not a very fast typer, but I'll try to get it up there. But it was Denver Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, defined as Inc., is against all forms of racism and bigotry. Inc. recognizes that structural racism must be eliminated in order to provide for equitable outcomes for people of color. Inc. adopts an anti-racist policy in which actions taken by it on Denver regulatory proposals shall be considered using a filter of achieving racial equity and equality, promoting human rights and dignity, and forging healing among all residents of Denver. Again, I think we really, we had this issue when we were talking about group living. We really need people of color to be weighing in on these issues and not having a bunch of people deciding what's right or wrong for people of color who have been clearly treated inequitably in many areas of regulatory matters. So
Okay.
that was my attempt to try to hone it so that it would be actually workable. Thank you.
Can you put that in there? And I have one friendly amendment instead of, I can't remember what you said, structural. I think it may be systemic is the term you really want. Systemic racism.
Actually, structural speaks to regulatory matters. Systemic reaches into many more matters. So structural is the right one for this particular implementation.
Okay, well, we need to like see it. So if you can please type it in there. Next person, I think.
We go. I think, Adrian, is your connection better, and are you amenable to this conversation? Because she's presenting this, and we're in the middle of a motion already on the floor.
I think we need to read it. Is that true, Adrian?
I can, to answer Ian's question, I can hear everything pretty much that you guys are saying. Can you hear what I'm saying? I apologize for my distance. I'm actually on a job at this instant.
Oh, we lost you again, Adrian.
Adrian, you might have more success if you turn your video off. That way there's less bandwidth attempting to be used.
Right, that's what I was going to say is, Adrian, if you can do that, let me see if I can put it in the chat for him.
Miles, that makes you next.
Yeah, Miles, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I've got this question being brought up in the ZAP meeting raises a lot of questions for me. And also being a minority, I do realize in principle, we all do support this and it does make sense. But in the context of the ZAP meetings and the current projects moving forward with the city, what we've been hearing from some members is basically if you're against what the city's presenting, you basically are racist. So, and this has happened multiple times and it's been done to multiple people. Even the ZAP committees basically was accused of being racist because they were questioning the city proposals. So my concern is if this is being used as a weapon against people who are questioning what the city's bringing forward, then it's basically a way, and it's a very divisive, it could be a very divisive instrument to say, if you're not against us supporting these cities' proposals, you're racist. So I think there's some underlying questions that need to be answered of how are we defining racist? And we've got to separate it and focus on what INC does. They sit down, they have discussions. And I think it's a very easy to go, well, you're in the other camp, you're racist because you're not with us. And that's what I'm concerned about. So I think what INC does is it creates a forum where people can sit down and discuss these things. And I think it's an easy way, and it's kind of a cheap trick to go, if you're not with us, you're racist because we want change to happen. So that's at least where I'm coming from. And I'm very concerned about this and people using this divisive language to just label people and shut them up and bully them because if you go against us, you're racist. So that's where I'm coming from. And I think it's very concerning because it has been used. And that is my concern with this. Thank you.
We have you back on, Adrian, and you can at least, I think you're off video. Can you chat now? Adrian, are you there?
It might be worthwhile for him to try to call in as well.
Yeah, I think he might. I haven't seen him call back in, but I thought he was turning off his video. I think the next person who had their hand up, and we just have a few minutes. Let me see if this is Adrian. Adrian, is that you coming on? Adrian, are you back on? It takes a while to get through on Zoom. Adrian, are you back on? Okay, Susan Payne, do you want to go ahead?
Okay, I just wanted to agree with both of the previous two speakers. I had a concern about the kind of overreaching verbiage of Adrian's proposal, because I mean, not everything that INC does has to do with racism or anti-racism. So for instance, the proposal to have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, that doesn't apply there. And I also am concerned about people being labeled as and limiting conversation and discussion about things if they feel like they're going to be called a racist just for asking questions. And that's all.
All right, Travis, I think you're next.
Great, thank you so much. I applaud the intent of this motion. However, as I was combing through our INC's governance documents, I noticed that our diversity, equity, and inclusion statement is a bit lacking, and probably should have some more teeth and meat into it. And I would encourage the authors of this statement maybe to go back and actually review the INC diversity, equity, and inclusion statement in the bylaws to enhance that. And I think furthermore, it would make sense for the organization to do a little bit more work around how we as an organization can operate through the lens or with the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, including racism. So my thinking with respect to this specific statement is that in the context of the time in which we are living, yes, it calls on us to make a statement with respect to being anti-racist and tackling it head on as an entity. That said, I don't think that the organization has done a sufficient job in addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. And I think it bears worth saying that we revisit our policies, our statements, and that included and embedded in the work that we do, we keep an eye on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that could have something to do with miles per hour in a neighborhood, zoning, etc. So I think some more work needs to be done around this, but I really do applaud the intent behind the statement.
Vincent, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, peace and blessings and good morning to everyone. I happened to see this being shared by Lisa Calderon, so I decided to jump into the meeting. I understood the discussion was about equity, inclusion, and I haven't had the opportunity to read the document in which everybody is referring to. I have included my email in the chat to receive the document so I can review it, reach out with suggestions or anything. But, you know, my name is Vincent Klaus. I own my own company here in Denver. I do hip hop music. You know, the entertainment industry had been stricken hard. So we're talking about reforms in the police department. When we're talking about reforms in the police department, we need to pay attention to three particular things. These three particular things is misconduct, abuse, and profiteering. So, you know, it's not specifically a racial issue. It's these particular things that are plaguing our police departments, which ultimately lead our individual officers to make decisions that are not healthy and do not fit the community. So as we begin to move forward in trying to find residual solutions, I also would like to know, do you guys have direct communication, or how is the police union, you know, communicating with the group to ensure that any changes or measures or discussions being made by civilians and the average people are actually being retained by the officers, by their administrators, being filtered through and put into their morning briefs for when it's time for them to go. Yeah.
I love your questions. And I really want, our panel hasn't come on yet, sorry. And so,
Word. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, you're good. So this is the deal. I want you to hold on to your questions until they come on. So we do have somebody from the police department. So you really have some great questions. So if you can wait just a few, okay, that would be great. So what we're talking about is a motion for what INC is going to do for,
Okay.
for us. But hold your
No
question.
problem. I apologize.
You're good. No, you're good. Okay. Anybody else? I don't know, Adrian, are you back on?
It might be worthwhile for us to ask if anyone on the phone would like to speak now.
Yeah, do we have?
Raised his hand. Emmett raised his hand.
Emmett, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I'd like to speak. You know, for too long, we've been going around the edges of this issue. We haven't really grappled with it. And if it's ever going to change, it has to be dealt with. It has to be dealt with in the terms that it's in. It's systematic racism. And if you don't want to deal with that, then you're part of the problem. That's all I have to say.
I think, I think we'll hold on to a lot of this discussion for after our panel, because I think this is a large issue. And I think, as Emmett said, that we're skirting around some of the issues. And I think some of those issues, and I think, I'm sorry, the previous speaker, and I can't think of your name, Travis, was talking about how this is the time, and it seems like this is definitely the time. And and again, Travis, as Travis said too, that we might need to redo our bylaws, but we also, I think it seems highly topical, highly relevant for this time period that we make a statement, that we actually have a statement that we can agree on that would be effective to impact the work that we do. I have one other topic before we go back. So everybody review in the chat, if you could please review the proposed alternative proposal. And I have one other thing to mention. Please let me just go find my notes for a second. But basically, Denver Decides has a, sorry about that. Let me put it in the chat. So if you go to Denver Decides and you go to YouTube, I'm going to type it into the chat, and so that everybody can see that. But basically, Denver Decides, Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation and Denver League of Women Voters and Denver 8 TV just completed part of their 20-year partnership forms to inform Denver voters about local candidates and state and local ballot issues. All voters should be informed of candidates' views and the pros and cons of ballot issues. A total of 9 candidate forms and 14 ballot issues can be reviewed via YouTube. I'm going to put the YouTube link in the chat for everyone just to know that there's a big ballot coming up, okay? And so it's you know, important to at least review the topics prior to voting. So please go through and review that. I'm going to put that in the chat so that you can have a link, and I think it's also on our INC website. And then Ian, you had something?
Well, I believe that we have this motion on the floor. I see Christine's hand is up. I see Trisha Schmidt is asking to discuss this motion. I mean, we're about to start our forum at 9:30. I believe the best case scenario here to make sure the forum moves on at the right period of time is for a delegate to recommend tabling this discussion and not the original motion, so that we can bring it up in our next meeting and do some of this back end work. Because I feel like if we get into outside of anything of the voting, we're already at 9:27. So I think it's going to put us into our forum.
And we have a tight agenda, and I was just going to hold it over until the end of the meeting. But if somebody wants to put a motion on the table to a motion out to table the motion, then I would entertain that.
I see Trisha Schmidt has, and Christy is seconding.
Okay.
I will second. I will second. Drew Dutcher will second.
Okay.
To table. Thank you.
Can we have a show? Sorry, my phone is on. Can we have a show of hands? Who agrees with that? If your hands are up, can you lower your hands and then we can put them up again?
Do we have everyone renamed as a delegate?
Is everyone named as a delegate? Have you?
It'll be much easier for the note takers if everyone can go and rename them names to delegate. Really quick.
This is Drew. I'm not sure if I'm named as a delegate. I did type in when I registered I was a delegate. So
yeah, I think it doesn't say.
You can change your name to the
Yeah, if you
participant.
can go up to your name and type that. That way we know you're a delegate, and then if you can just raise your hand. I can't do anything because I'm a host, but please go ahead and we'll start counting.
Christine, I see your note here. I'll also help you count.
And Drew is raising his hand. Emmett, are you raising your hand? Oh, I see it. Gee,
oh, I see.
And I am too.
okay.
I'm having a hard time doing it.
Oh, you fuck. Oh, damn it.
You know how to do it on the little, there's like by your,
Okay, I just figured it out.
yeah, by your, yeah, there's a little kind of like 3 dots and you can list that. So I see hands raised, actual hand raised or thumbs up. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
That option.
7, 8. I'm going to count you 9, 10. We have 10 that are non-blue hands. It's blue hands in Zoom. So I'm just going to say you had actual hands raised. So we have an additional 9 hands. Okay.
I count 22 plus your 10 is 32.
Okay. All right. Okay, you can lower your hands now. And Ian, I'm going to hand the floor over to Ian.
Are we gonna just call that good, or are we gonna, do you want to do no's just to make sure for the?
Yeah,
for
we'll
the-
do no's. Are there any no's? Sorry about that. Lower your hands if you can. Well, I mean physically, but also on Zoom. If you can lower your hand on Zoom, that'd be great. So I'm doing a call for no's. Any no's? I see none. Any abstentions? Abstentions, please raise your hand or put it in the Zoom. I don't see any abstentions. Okay, the motion passes.
All right, so it's tabled then
It's
until the.
tabled then for the next meeting. Ian, do you want to go ahead and take the floor? And we are going to start with our panel discussion. And I'll put in the chat the YouTube for Denver Decides. So Ian, why don't you go?